Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of the First Generation Speak series, part of the global celebration of 50 years of Playback Theatre. We are gathering from across the world to honor the pioneers who shaped Playback Theatre into what it is today. These interviews celebrate their journeys, their wisdom, and their impact across cultures and communities. Today, we turn our attention to the Arab speaking playback community, where playback has been a space for connection, resistance, healing, and hope. My name is Cveta Baliska and I'm joining you from Bulgaria. I serve on the board of directors of Center for Playback Theatre and I coordinate this year's international 50 years celebrations. Some of you may know me as the organizer of the first international online playback theatre conference in 2020 and a live European playback theatre gathering in 2022 in Sofia. And some of you I just had the joy to meet in Salamanca to our European Playback Theatre gathering in Spain, also part of this year's celebrations. The Center for Playback Theatre, founded by Jonathan Fox, supports training, ethics, accreditation, and initiatives across the globe. Together with our partner, the International Playback Theatre Network, we are celebrating this milestone year with this monthly interview series, online peer supervisions, the global performance initiative, Stories That Shaped Us. You can still join, find information in Facebook and in our website. Listening Hour, practiced worldwide, also was part of the celebrations, and our big 50-year birthday celebration in November 10th. I hope you all will be there. I want to acknowledge the people behind Playback Theatre International Organizations, Center for Playback Theatre Board, Igor Lubitov, Beata Shomuji, Radhika Jain, Sikan Chang, Deborah Scott, Damiola Apotieri, Soline Daccache, Sheila Donio, Mina Mo, and myself, and our partner from International Playback Theatre Network, Andrea Sandoval, Roberta Roberto, Ferran Luengo, Sheree Haley, Kimberly Daly. Today's tech support is provided by Damiola Apotieri, Sheila Donio, and Igor Lubitov. Thank you so much for being here and supporting the event. Playback theatre is built on listening, empathy, and inclusion. We ask everyone here to remain respectful, open-hearted, and kind. Hate speech or disrespect of any kind will not be tolerated. Let's hold this space with care. This session is being recorded and will be published online. By remaining here, you agree to that. It is my honor to present you our speakers today. Farah Wardani, actress, drama therapist, and director of Laban in Lebanon, where she uses theater for social and political transformation. Ben Rivers, drama therapist, educator, and founder of Dawar Arts in Egypt, working with communities affected by conflict and trauma. Soline Daccache, playback trainer, therapist, and founder of Red Bridge Ensemble in Lebanon, now based in Portugal, and a member of CPT board. Welcome, Farah, Ben, Soline. It's so good to have you here. How are you today? Do you want to say a few opening words before I begin with the questions?
Thank you, Sveta. I'm so excited and nervous at the same time.
Thank you, Cveta, very much for all your work in putting this together. I'm looking forward to this call today. Thank you.
Me too. I'm very excited for our gathering today and looking forward to it.
Yes, me too. And I know how many interesting things you have been done. So I want to jump right into it. And I will start with Ben. Could you share how Playback Theatre first arrived in Arab speaking countries and what personally drew you into this work?
So I came to Palestine in 2011. I went to live and work at the Freedom Theatre, which is a Palestinian cultural organization in Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank of occupied Palestine. And the Freedom Theatre invited me to develop a playback theatre program. A little bit about the Freedom Theatre, very briefly. It was co-founded by Giuliano Merchamis, and the Freedom Theatre uses theatre, but also film and other art forms as a form of cultural resistance against Israeli occupation, apartheid, and settler colonialism. And before I arrived, Giuliano was tragically assassinated outside of the theatre in April of 2011. I arrived in September, and the Israeli occupation forces were in the middle of almost nightly raids on the camp. They were arresting members of the Freedom Theatre. And so one of the very first performances that we did after I gave some initial training to the Palestinian actors at the Freedom Theatre, was a performance in the streets of Jenin refugee camp, where we invited people who had been arrested, disappeared, tortured, to share their stories. And that was actually our very first playback theatre performance. And that then led to a much larger project called the Freedom Bus, which was co-founded with Faisal Abu Al-Hija, who is here today on this call. Hello, Faisal. And the Freedom Bus involved taking playback theatre across the West Bank to Palestinian refugee camps, villages, farming communities, very remote regions, all places that are affected by political violence, extreme settler violence, home demolitions from the Israeli army, people being disappeared. We took playback theatre to these places to give people an opportunity to share the reality of life under occupation and apartheid. But we also wanted these stories to be transmitted, to travel to a larger audience. And so we invited journalists, ambassadors, diplomats, researchers, filmmakers, and people from across the world to join us on these trips across the West Bank. And many of those people went back to their countries and shared the stories that they had heard and also the realities that they had witnessed with their own eyes. The next year, in 2012, the Freedom Theatre's Freedom Bus Playback Theatre troupe was invited to Amman in Jordan to perform, and then to Egypt in 2012, where we also gave some playback theatre workshops. And that was really the beginning of playback theatre in Egypt. After that, there were many workshops that followed, and eventually several troupes formed that some of those continue till today. And here on this call, we have many pioneers from those Egyptian playback theatre troupes. So hello to you all, Sarah, Nadine, Munir. And then in 2013, I went to Lebanon to give a playback theatre workshop there. Actually, Armand Volkas had been there the year before in 2012, so I was following on from training that he offered. And playback theatre at the Freedom Theatre continued over several years. It was offered as part of the curriculum in the Freedom Theatre's acting program. And today, Soline might talk a little bit about this later. There is a Fida Ataya, who was one of the members of that troupe. She's continuing to teach and lead playback theatre activities in or near Ramallah. at the Freedom Theatre, we did offer some training in playback theatre to community members in the South Hebron Hills, which is a very remote area that's targeted by extreme settler violence. People there were very interested in playback theatre because we'd been going there for many years. They wanted to learn more. Training was offered, but it was very difficult for them to continue because of the levels of violence that they were facing, and also because the Freedom Theatre is at the other end of the West Bank, and even though in normal conditions it would only take a couple of hours to drive between the two places, because in the West Bank there are over 90 Israeli checkpoints, it's very difficult to travel, and so it was difficult for us to offer ongoing supervision and mentorship. And in general, this was one of these conditions were responsible for making it quite difficult in general to continue playback theatre. At the Freedom Theatre, the actors there were all professional actors. We had funding to ensure that people were paid for their work. Unlike more privileged contexts, people were not really able to volunteer their time. But of course, this added a challenge when funding ended. It was difficult to maintain the troupe. I might end there.
And what drew you personally in this work?
So my my own interest in playback theatre took me to California, where I did a master's in drama therapy. And there I worked over several years with Armand Volkas, who was using playback theatre in initiatives that were related to peace building and conflict transformation. I was also involved in a troupe there that was involved in playback for social justice. And I decided I wanted to explore that further. I started a PhD program. And I wanted to do research in Palestine because of my own family history, my own legacy of family involvement in the displacement of Palestinian people. So I wanted to really connect with the realities of life on the ground, to experience for myself what it is like for Palestinian people living under occupation. So that was really a main motivating force that took me there.
You haven't been born somewhere in the area, but you have roots and connection. And maybe this is a moment that I can ask people, can you write in the chat where have you been born or where you lived your first half, let's say, of your lives? So as to see what is the social mapping here in this interview. And Farah,
maybe if I can just, before we move to Farah, if we could maybe see the first video that
of course.
that Shayla had lined up.
Yes, of course.
Every day you visit a new place with a new, different people, new community. But in the end, it's all about the occupation.
الحرية مش إشي سهل. الحرية مش إشي سهل. هي مش كلمة بتتعلمها بالمدرسة. الحرية بدك تروح تفهمها من الناس اللي فاقدينها. بدك تروح تفهمها من المعاناة، من قلب المعاناة، من البيوت، من بين الأطفال. بتروح تقعد مع الطفل الصغير بتحكي له فهمني، بدي أسمعك، احكي لي شو يعني حرية.
I'm here just to say, just to end the occupation, to end the apartheid, to tell the world, to tell everyone that there is people here suffering from racism, from apartheid, from discrimination.
روح على النبي صالح تقعد بنت صغيرة عمرها 6 سنين تحكي لك قصة. ضربوا على البيت اللي متخبي فيه هي وامها وصاحباتها اللي من عمرها. خبوا كل البنات والأولاد الصغار في بيت طابق عالي عشان الغاز كان معبي الطابق التحتاني. فبدهم يطلعوهم عشان ما يموتوش. انخنقوا. حكوا صاروا يصيحوا على الشباب اللي تحت، فصاروا الشباب اللي تحت عملوا سلم، صاروا يرموا من الطابق الأول هيك وينزلوهم عن الطابق الثاني والأول للأرض عن طريق السلم. فالبنت الصغيرة ماسكة بإيد أمها بتحكي لها لا ترمينيش، بديش أموت. أنا بديش أموت.
Now you point everything towards them, يعني towards the settlers, towards the checkpoints, towards the army.
If you believe in Palestine, if you believe in freedom, you need to do something. I'm not a fighter. Maybe I'm a fighter in art, but I'm not a fighter with gun.
We are doing our best.
Wow. Thank you for this video. Yeah. Farah, what was your own entry point into playback and what inspired you to stay committed to it?
My own entry point to playback was actually the workshop Ben mentioned with Armand Volkas in 2012, and that was just a trial that many members of my troupe Laban, which was back then specialized in improvisation and theater and social theater. So we used to use theater of the oppressed techniques and improv theater as our way of working. And we came across playback. It was actually one of our team members who met Ben in the US on a feeding program, and he took a 2 days workshop with him, and he came back full of excitement telling us like, I found the tool for us. It combines both improv theater and social change, and it's called Playback Theatre. And there is this guy called Ben Rivers. We need to get in touch with him. And then a few months later, Armand came to Lebanon, so we attended that workshop. And we kept on practicing on our own, trying to find material online to get to learn on our own. We did a few performances that weren't really in terms of our knowledge now very successful. Like it was a trial and error, but it worked. But then in around November 2013, October, November, we invited Ben to give that company training to Laban team members, and all the team members attended that training with Ben, and it was life-changing. It was the opening for our main focus in playback. Now playback is the main tool that we use in our work. So we've been working since 2013 on Playback Theatre, and actually started by the end of that workshop a monthly performance that we call Your Stories on Stage, that happens every second Wednesday of the month, and it hasn't stopped. So we've been performing regularly for 12 years now, nonstop, despite COVID, the revolution, the war, the explosion, everything that we've been through over those years. So we've been doing playback. What kept me doing playback is that I found my passion in stories and connecting with the people and actually going to the communities and listening to their stories, because how we operate in Laban is that we go to the communities instead of inviting them to our theater. So we tour across the country. And this had gave us exposure to communities that are very rural, very marginalized, that are the least to be heard or to be witnessed, or anyone to give them voice. Hearing those stories, connecting directly with one, seeing the change that was happening due to playback, because we've worked on very, very sensitive topics with a lot of populations. So our average is around 250 to 300 performance a year. That's more or less a performance on daily basis. We reach around between 7,000 and 9,000 audience members also a year over the past 12 years. So it's a lot of connection with the community. And this is I think it's the dream of anyone who believes that they are fighters towards our world, it being artists or anyone, to be able to connect as much with the community. This is what gives me the motive to keep on doing playback on a daily basis.
Wow, this is really inspiring. It is a huge work. Congratulations. And Soline, you are part of all this. And how did you become involved in playback, and what were the first steps of building a community in the region?
Okay, so as Farah said, I was part of this first group who took the workshop with Armand Volkas in 2012. But then when Ben came in November 2013, it was very different because we were taking the training as a group. It was deepening our way of understanding playback and listening. And I personally found myself. I found my voice. I found the connection between my body and my spirit. And I started a journey with Ben, who invited me. He's very good at recruiting people. He invited me to join him in Egypt. To work on many different things. One of them, I was attending his workshops in playback. And also I joined a psychodrama program with him. So I got involved in Egypt without knowing. And in parallel, playback, Ben established a contract, an agreement with the CPT to create the Arab School of Playback Theatre. And this was in 2012. So he started asking us, including Farah and other people, to get involved, and he was encouraging us. So in 2014, I gave the first training for a Syrian group who came specifically to Lebanon. They crossed the border, and the war has already started in Syria. And I felt that I wasn't very ready, but with Ben's support and supervision, it happened, and I gained confidence. And we continued with that. So Fida Ataya in Palestine, she was also starting giving some workshops and trainings supported by Ben or co-training with Ben. And in 2015, through the school, Ben invited Jonathan Fox to lead master class. Many of us present here today attended this training, including Muhammad Ipo and Nadine. Hello. And then with the growing of the school, also playback was growing, and we were teaching. Like in 2015, Nadine Emil joined us as a trainer. We co-conducted the first training in Cairo. And then in 2016, Farah joined the team. But in 2015, when Jonathan was there, we made a meeting, like a foundational meeting, where we felt that this is like the real kickoff of the school, because this time we were officially as Arab trainers there. So in parallel, giving trainings, I also established my own group in 2016 in Lebanon. That was the Red Bridge Ensemble. It was in February. And after that, like 6 months later, I co-founded the Dawar Playback Group in the Dawar Center that Ben has established. And Nadine was founding member with me. And we have Dalia Sabur and Sami Najam and Muhammad Abul Fatah. 6 months later, almost, there was a new group in Egypt called Khuyut, and Sarah Rafat is there. She's one of the co-founders, and Khuyut has been operating until today. So I have been supporting Khuyut in a way or another. I have continued giving trainings in Lebanon, while also working with my group in Lebanon, the Red Bridge, and the Dawah group in Cairo. There's more about the other countries. like the development from 2017 and 2023, but maybe I can continue about that later on.
Yes, yes, really, that's really interesting and inspiring. And Ben, in many places, playback has survived despite very difficult circumstances. What helped sustain and build strong communities over the years, in your view?
I think first I should acknowledge, as it's perhaps already clear from what we've shared, that the context is extremely challenging. Many of the communities that people are working with in the Middle East are experiencing political violence. In some cases, freedom of expression is restricted, as it is increasingly all over the world, as we're seeing today. But despite these challenges, playback has survived for well over a decade now in Arab countries, Arabic-speaking countries. And I would say part of that is because there is this deep human need to share stories. And this is one of the reasons that people gravitate so strongly towards playback theatre. I think it's no coincidence that playback took off around the time of the revolutions that were occurring in the Arab Spring. People across the Arab world were rising up against their Western-backed post-colonial regimes and dictators with a strong desire to speak, to be active citizens in their countries, and playback resonated very much with this spirit. As Farah said, Laban is the longest surviving troupe in the Arab region, so I think maybe she would be better placed to speak about some of the elements that have sustained her troupe over all of these years.
Yes. Wow, and Farah, you have done a lot of projects, really interesting projects, so please mention some of them and what moment stands out to you as especially meaningful or showing the social or political power of playback in your context.
Yeah. So to take it from where Ben stopped, the importance of playback and the reason I believe playback survived is because both practitioners and the communities believe that playback is a need. It's not a luxury at this moment. It wasn't a luxury at any time because our stories are part of our survival. When you live in a community that is constantly being wiped out, and there is an agreement from too many countries in the world to I don't know, to erase your community, to erase your narrative, to erase your story, to claim that you never existed, or if you existed, you were just savage, you were uncivilized, you had nothing to hold to. Your existence does not matter. You are barely human. Telling your story becomes an act of resistance. Being alive becomes an act of resistance, and our stories sadly are not being documented because of too many factors related to where the funding goes, to where academia puts their focus, and so many other elements related to international foreign policies. So it becomes our duty as people who can hold stories and give them life and keep them alive to actually make the room for those stories to be shared, to be heard, to be witnessed, and to survive. Because what we also do with the stories that we listen to and playback is that we take them a step forward, always. Sometimes transform them into scripted plays, into books, into monuments, into different creations that can survive beyond the playback performance. It's both the feeling, like for example, in my troupe, what keeps the team going is that they believe that they are fighters using pacifist tools like playback. So, but we are equally at a life-threatening position, and if we don't act fast and we don't use our tools, we can be erased. So it's a survival mechanism for us to hold the space for ourselves and for other people. And as you mentioned, we've worked on too many topics because it's never one conflict. It's always very layered, and that's also part of those policies to keep us busy, to not have the time to reflect or to exist or to enjoy life. We've worked through the years with the Syrian refugees and host communities in Lebanon, and also with the Syrian refugees on their own, working on social cohesion, on spaces of expression, on them talking about their experiences during the war, during refugee life. We've worked with children fighters who were recruited by ISIS. We've worked with children who aren't registered legally. We've worked with the people who were displaced during the war in war affected areas and in areas of that they took as shelter. We've worked with the ex-fighters from the Lebanese civil war from both sides of the fight, either on their own or together, so we could bring those two highly tensioned communities together. We are working lately with the children who came from Gaza to Lebanon to receive medical treatment, also using playback theater, because as you know, we have elaborated a tool that is directly accurate to use with children, which is puppet playback theater, which is similar to the playback that we practice, all of us here, but using puppets to make it more appealing and more relatable for children in early age. So being creative with playback and always trying to find new ways to make it more suitable for our context and more working in our context also gave us the motive to keep going and to go places.
Well, it's amazing. And I think you also mentioned you worked with people with different disabilities and visual impaired, and really, really big area of people you worked with. It's really inspiring, and it's a huge work. And Soline, you were also part of all this, and you've trained and mentored many practitioners. How you see the ripple effect of this training within and beyond the Arab-speaking region?
Yes, before speaking about like beyond the Arab-speaking countries, I'd like to continue the panorama of the development of playback in our region. So after the 2006, that was really rich because also in the Arab school, we brought Jo Salas to Lebanon. It was really a great development and an honor. We had 2 different workshops with her. We had the privilege to have her feedback about one of the performances on the conducting. So it was very important, her presence with us. We also received many other international trainers like Karen Gisler, Anastasia Voropieva, and later on in 2017, Steve Nash, and in 2018, Hannah Fox. So all this work has helped us to feel connected to the international community. And from our workshops and from people joining the existing groups, many leadership came out. So, for example, also in Lebanon, Hani Rustom, who was Syrian and Lebanese living there, he established a project in 2017 in the city of Tripoli, that is the second largest city in Lebanon, where there is a neighborhood of conflicting communities since the civil war. And the aim of the project was to bring people from this area, from this underdeveloped area, to speak together, to tell their stories, to work together. And this project continued, and it's called Sada, Playback Theatre Group. And from this leadership as well, like Hani and Shadi Al-Aye, they went to Mosul, to Iraq, and they trained a group there. And we have Mu'min Azwar from Iraq with us today from that group. Of course, they struggle like any other place to continue or to survive because of whether political violence or economical condition. But they always try. In the same time, in 2019 also, we have Reem Sibai from Syria as well, who was living in Lebanon and who went to Syria to an area in Hama called Salamieh, and she also tried to start a group there, and they also struggled because of the war, the lack of internet. When the explosion happened in Lebanon and Reem was living in Lebanon, she had to migrate to Turkey and then later on somewhere else. So there's a lot of movement and migration, economical pressure, but still people try to continue. They try to find means. In parallel, in Egypt also, there was a woman-only group called Badriya, which is the full moon, but in the feminine version of the word. So it was only women doing playback for women. And we have also Rahma from this group today. And this group did not continue in its own shape, but it has stopped and revived again with a new name called Samakat in 2023. In 2018, in Ramallah, in Palestine, a group started and they are struggling now, facing a lot of political violence, accidents that threaten their safety and also their belonging, as we heard about also the Freedom Theatre in Jenin. So this is a reality. So they continue to struggle, and it's always a fight, but it will continue. And we also have some new groups, like in Egypt, from the groups who were already formed before. There's always new leadership, like the Shagaf Playback Theatre group. We have now Munir present today, and he co-founded this group with Dalia Sabbour, and they started almost in 2022. So the community is growing. Also in Upper Egypt, there was been some training for community groups. I did many trainings in Upper Egypt, but also other trainers who are present today. And from that, we started to feel a greater connection with the international community. And we had a great participation in the IPTN conference 2 years ago, while people from Egypt and Lebanon attended the conference in South Africa.
Wow.
And also lately, also in Salamanca.
That's great. Yes, amazing. And Ben, in your context, playback often touches directly on political and social realities. And how do you work with that in your performances and teaching? And also painful and traumatic stories. Do you have any tips or suggestions how to hold them well?
Before I respond to that, I just want to acknowledge that in Jordan, Reem Abu Kishk played and continues to play a significant role in developing playback theatre there. I'm not really sure of the status of that group. I think Soline, you might know better.
I can say I skipped that because I saw that at the beginning Ben mentioned that there were trainings happening there, and I thought that he already mentioned that. So from 2012, from the first training that happened, Reem Abu Kishk and people from Jordan gathered, and they are still trying to do something from time to time. It's like project-based, so it's not ongoing, but they also remained from 2012 until today, of course, struggling a lot with many conditions. It's not a continuous group, but there is a core group who keep on trying doing playback since then. I have participated with them in some performances, and I gave them some trainings, and their name was Playback Theatre Amman, but later they changed it into Mensaj. So if you go to the Facebook, you have to see Mensaj.
Okay. Great. Yes. So Ben,
For
Thank you,
the question
Soline.
regarding dealing with stories of trauma, maybe Farah, you want to start answering and we can continue that.
Let's first, Ben, answer about the context and political social realities and how he works in trainings and performances, and then we continue.
I'll talk a little bit then about how we worked at the Freedom Theatre. So in taking Playback Theatre to these remote communities that are impacted by high levels of violence under Israeli occupation and apartheid, it was very important for us to partner with activists on the ground and groups and organizations that were already involved in resistance, in the movement to end apartheid. Across the West Bank of occupied Palestine, there are popular struggle committees, and we worked very closely with these committees to organize playback theatre performances. Often they would invite us to perform for special occasions around protests or commemorations. Those partnerships felt very important for us, that we're not existing in a bubble. And I would say that that sort of guideline can apply across many contexts. That as playback theatre practitioners, as playback theatre companies, we don't exist in a bubble. We try to connect with groups and organizations and individuals that are part of the larger movement. I would also say that, you know, in terms of, in a more sort of technical sense, when we are working with stories in this context, the teller is, as always in playback theatre, sharing a true story, a personal story from their life. But it's very important that the actors are able to understand and acknowledge and concretize the wider social and historical context that gives rise to that specific individual story. So that means that the troupe needs to do a lot of preparation beforehand, especially if you're going into a community that has a context that's a little bit different to your own.
Yes.
I'll
Yes,
hand over to Farah or
yes,
Soline,
and
so they have more to
Farah
say.
can say more about what is your experience with traumatic stories or painful stories, and also is there a story where playback opened a dialogue or created connection across deep divides, if there is such kind of a story, or what was if there was some really funny or most touching moment you recall?
Yeah. I would like to also add to what Ben said, the importance of the context analysis, to know your audience, to know their community, and also to know what echoes you might come across, like the historical knowledge of the area, of the population you're working with. Who are they? Where do they come from? What did they experience on the collective? And maybe if you also have access to know a little bit of the personal of their experience, that would be really, really helpful. And it would also help the team of playbackers to be prepared, to be ready. And this will protect them also from taking in the trauma that they might hear and they might come across. Also, the training of the playbackers, the ongoing training. We have a very strict policy of once a week, 3 hours training for all our teamers. Like, they don't miss a training session on any week, regardless if they are performing or not, just to stay in shape, to make sure that your tools are in shape all the time, and also to give ourselves the space to share stories. While we are training, we are using our personal stories, and that's also a space for support. We also support our team through psychological support, retreats, meetings, trainings. For example, I've been talking about the group of children that just arrived from Gaza to receive medical attention in Lebanon and support. This is a very delicate group. Most of the children we are dealing with have amputations, so they have lost at least one limb, an eye, or something, and they are highly deformed physically as children, and they have experienced a lot. So before we throw our team into this this very hard audience, we had to prepare them through a training on how to deal with the handicap and man-made handicap and losing limbs from a medical perspective, from a psychological perspective, and also from a social perspective. And here comes the importance of the echoes of the story, because this is purely political. Like, those children did not lose their limbs in a car accident, sadly. It was a huge worldwide system that allowed that to happen. And you need to acknowledge that, to also support those children into a transformation of their story, instead of them feeling guilty because they are in pain, or guilty because this happened to them and maybe did not happen to every single other child in their community. So this kind of preparation is very important, to keep your team aware and briefed on the situation, on the political, the social of any community they are working with, or any community in general, because we do believe that the playback practitioners do have the responsibility to take this art form and this skills. It's beyond the heightened dramatic event Jonathan Fox speaks about. It's a heightened art form, and that's our duty as someone who practices this art form, is to be not dissociated from the reality, to be at the heart of the reality, to be very well aware of what's happening, and to bear responsibility. What we also do during the performance, when a performance is happening, we have tons of grounding techniques that we practice during our rehearsals. It being breathing, or activating your senses, or getting support in a very subtle way from your team members. So all these techniques are very helpful and do come to life during heavy performances, to protect the team and to allow them to play back the story in the most faithful and beneficial way. And then also the very important thing is that we do follow up with our team members. So after every performance, we have an equal time to reflect on that performance. So we don't just finish a performance and go home. We reflect, we feedback, we talk, we say what went well, what did go well, what worked this time, what can be done better next time. So these are very, very important practices that keep us strong and keep us really able to do stories, even the most traumatic ones. And we've been face to face with so many traumatic stories, so many. Like, I can't count. And if I was to pick one of the stories, like, I really can't. But if I was to focus on stories that opened a dialogue, these would be the stories that were between Syrian refugees and host communities, where a lot of racism happens between the host community in Lebanon and the Syrian refugees. And when we, for example, bring an audience of women who are from the same age group, more or less, from Syrian background and Lebanese background, and they start sharing similar stories, because their stories intersect a lot. Like, they are mothers, they want the best for their children, they are hard workers, they are facing the same financial struggles. It always starts from a playback performance and then goes further in terms of expressing and meeting and connecting and becoming friends in the future. Of course, I have to be like, the last war on Lebanon, and during the full-scale war, when we were performing in shelters, these were the hardest stories to listen, because our team members, our playback team members, had already also been displaced. So, for example, one team member would be displaced from his house to another shelter, and come to a third shelter to play back the stories of people who are displaced. And that's very complex, because this is a complete fusion between your personal experience and the experience of the audience. And it's a very delicate space.
Yes. And you explained it so vividly, so I felt this. I was there. Really, really interesting. And Soline, what do you see as the most important challenges and also the greatest strengths of practicing playback in our speaking world?
I would like to add something to the question related to working with trauma, and then continue with that question. I would add that the artistic sensibility is very, very important. So part of our training is how to bring those stories of trauma in a very delicate way, where there is like a sense of poetry, something in slow motion, really showing the events, but caring for how we receive it, because if it's like very violent on our bodies and ears, it will be very violent for the people who are receiving it freshly going out from trauma or still in an ongoing trauma. So the artistic sensibility is also coming from the art, from good art training, and from good and deep listening, and from the art of presence, being present in the body and mind fully within oneself and together as a group and with the room. As for your question, it was like about the strengths and the challenges. We spoke about
in your area, yeah.
In the Arabic speaking countries. We spoke about many of the challenges like the constant migration, forced displacement. Also that happens with many of the trainers, including myself, Hani, and other people, and Limsibai, who wanted to start something and continue it in Syria. Because we live in an area of war and instability and insecurity, it's difficult to sustain and maintain this mentorship, but it is possible. So we could support people to continue their training in many different ways, including online mentorship supervision, maybe sometimes inviting them to go outside to continue some trainings when it's possible. And Hani Ristom is one of the best of us in finding some funds to support people to continue their journey, and I salute him for this. So I think that there's a lot of strengths in our community because it's diverse. Like everyone has a different skill. Like for example, you find in Laban and the skills that Farah built within her group and community, like the artistry, the puppetry, other skills of working with ongoing trauma, the skills of like the experience they got in working with different conflicting communities. Some challenges, I said, the economical challenges, the security challenges, the instability in the region, the war, but also we talk about the strengths like the skills of the trainer, the determination to continue this work, the necessity of it as a way of existing and resisting, and also the tempers. We have a temper that is really warm and also strong. It's like fiery, and this temper it fuels our desire to continue and to do this art bluntly whenever we can, and the generosity that is part of the Arab culture. So this generosity, I think, is very important, despite the challenges that practitioners face every day and makes their life harder and harder, looking for jobs, for sustaining their life. They keep on opening their hearts to each other and trying to support each other as much as they can when they have very little privilege.
Yes. Thank you for the picture you drew to us. And Ben, one thing I want to ask you about, do you recall some really funny moment during your projects? During the years you worked intensively there, this is the one thing I want to ask you. If there's some really fun story that you recall. And the other is how you see playback evolving today in the region, and what gives you hope about the future of playback in the region.
Well, one of the things I learned living in Palestine is that Palestinians have a wonderful sense of humor, even about things that would otherwise seem very dark. So I remember one performance we did. Actually, it was quite common when many of our performances were outdoors in open air settings. And because of the constant presence of the Israeli occupation forces, they would often attend our performances, often to shut them down, but other times to kind of surveil what was happening. And I remember on one occasion we were performing next to the apartheid wall, and the Israeli army turned up in their jeeps, and they were on one of the jeeps they put like a deck chair, and the soldier was sitting with his binoculars watching the performance, and the actors had quite a laugh that he was getting this, you know, perfect view of their performance. And really it taught me a lot about how to approach very, very difficult circumstances, that sometimes humor is an important mode of survival. And I forget the second part of your question.
Yeah, how do you see the future of the playback in the region, and what is your hope for the playback in the region?
Well, I think maybe Farah and Soline a better place to talk about the future. But of course, my personal hope is that Playback Theatre continues to evolve in the way that we've heard. And I have great confidence and trust that in the hands of people like Farah and Soline and Hani and all the other people we've mentioned, that will happen, that it will continue to evolve and to serve the function that it is intended to serve, to really give people an opportunity to share from their hearts, to connect with each other, to be heard, to be witnessed, to feel a sense of solidarity with the people who are embodying their stories. I would say more generally, for people who are working perhaps in other parts of the world where there's other forms of oppression, and we're seeing that all over the world, that people learn, that they reach out to people like Farah, like Soline, people who have lived under extreme conditions of violence and oppression for supervision. These are the people who know how to work in these contexts. And we should, I feel like there's this transmission from elders to the next generation, from those with more experience to those who are starting out, is really important.
Yes, and Farah, please also you can say about some funny moment if you recall. Soline, you too later, if you have some vivid memory of some moment. And also we mentioned the young practitioners, and maybe would be really nice if you can give some advice or what you would say to the people that are starting, maybe not just starting playback, but maybe starting playback in a different circumstances.
So I would say for people who are starting to do playback in difficult circumstances, depending on the circumstances, whether they are there to challenge narratives, mainstream narratives, or they are there to support justice, or to support people who has survived trauma. It depends on the focus, but it's very important to understand the topic from different perspective, study it well, be close from the community if you are not from the community yourself, spend social time with them, understand their life, their culture, their habits. If it's about a political situation, revisit your privileges and your lack of privilege, and how this affects the work, and how this affects the listening, being ready to check facts also, because sometimes it is important to hear personal stories, but also to be aware of facts, because we cannot just take facts from personal stories. It's important to be also knowledgeable about the situation, to know about deep human rights violations, to understand, if you were working with trauma, to understand how really trauma works, and how also people respond differently to traumatic events. There is no one way. People are also resilient and have a lot of powerful resistance, even despite the wounds. So we have to acknowledge both parts and both sides of the experience, not only focus on the wounds and not only focus on the strengths and forget to give space for the pain to surface and to be acknowledged, depending on what difficult situation we are talking about.
Yes. Farah?
Yeah. Yeah, as Ben said, there's a lot of humor even in the hardest moments that we face. For example, in one of the performances we did for teenagers after the full-scale war, and we had so many stories about lost parents, lost houses, horrible experiences of the war. And then one young man comes on stage to share that during that war he was displaced to Tripoli, the city Soline mentioned before, and it's a city that is very well known to making very good sweets, desserts. And that guy in the middle of the war have met one new dessert that is very new to him, called halawat al-riz, which is made in Tripoli. And because of that, he started going to the gym so he doesn't ruin his body shape. And he said that he is thankful for the war because it introduced him to the sweet and to sports. And it was a very, very funny moment back then because the performance was very heavy and a lot of losses were mentioned in the story. And we came to a very raw experience of a child, more or less. He's a teenager, seeing the beauty even in the hardest moments. So it was a very light-hearted story that I can always remember, that this is the resilience we speak about. These people always find a way to stay alive and to enjoy even the smallest moments. As for my hope to the future of playback in our region, I hope that we get to experiment performances where we don't hear stories about loss and political oppression and violence and war. It's my dream to actually have a performance, at least one performance where all the stories are live. And maybe I would like to share a very funny story, because one time one of our team members traveled to France to continue her studies, and she started a playback troupe in that region in France. And because there was no operating playback companies there, she asked us to do an online performance for her team members, for them to see the full sequence of a performance, and they shared stories with us. We felt unable to play back those stories. They were stories about people who finished exams and wanted to go celebrate, someone who discovered a very beautiful tree nearby her house. And we always felt like, did any soldier jump from behind that tree and threatened your life? And it was just a tree. So it felt really complicated. So I wish we can reach a point where we can have performances that are that light, that sweet, and we can play with them. And if I was to give a tip for people who are starting playback, I would say that art in itself is not good. Art doesn't hold goodness at his heart. We saw the worst atrocities through history supported by very, very good artists and very good musicians. And like we can remember World War II and the quality of the music that it offered us. It's amazing. So art is not good at its heart necessarily. It's just a magnifier. So be careful what you magnify, what you put on stage, what you give voice to, what you highlight, what you put two lines underneath in your enactment, what you push for while you are reenacting a story, because this is very important. This is where comes your role as citizen actor, to be very careful and very aware of what you are magnifying through this very brutal ritualistic space of playback.
Oh, this is really inspiring what you're saying. And I want also to ask you something from the chat, and then we will go to breakout rooms. It is about your work with puppets from Vendela. She asks if you can say more about that, and maybe other people also will be interested in this topic, because it's not that common to use puppets.
Yeah. So what we've done is that we transformed the whole performance to be based on puppets. So it starts with the ritual, also with the puppets. And we kept some of the forms and we adapted them to be initiated by the puppets. Why the puppets are very neutral of color and shape, and their size is a 4 to 5 years old child. They're very light. We use 4 formats for the short form and 2 formats for the long form using the puppets. The kids really connect with those with enactments. It's very, very nice. I'm very happy if anyone wants to connect. I will drop my email in the chat. We can talk more about it. We always have the potential to also offer a training on the school because it really works in a magical way with children and with people affected by the trauma because it gives space and distance.
Wow, it's inspiring. I just want to try when you speak. I just have an inspiration to try. So this is really amazing, and it's great for you to put your contact so maybe other people also can invite you. And now we will go to the breakout rooms. It will be 15 minutes in the breakout rooms where we'll share between each other what resonated with you in today's conversations, what are you thinking about while you listening this inspiring talk. And we'll see you back shortly in 15 minutes and have a great time in the breakout rooms. Bye. Welcome back, everybody. I hope your time in the breakout rooms were meaningful. And now we'll open the space for questions and reflection from the audience. But before that, we will see a short video that is also part of the projects that we heard of. And also, please, if you have been part of these stories of the development of Arabic-speaking countries, playback theater communities, please write in the chat that you have been part of it, and maybe some of you we will hear after the video. We would love to hear some memories or other reflections from people that have been part in this history. But let us first watch the video.
راح اشوفوا مين يعني اللي بتحرك في الشارع. بالاخر طلع ابوي اللي ميت، يعني اللي بنزف وبتوجع. امي بدها تنزل لحالها تبدا فيها مش تتعلق فيها وحسب الشغل يعني عاشها المشكله. قلت له لا انا لازم انزل لانه مش عارف
بين العالم بيننا فيش فرق. احنا اقوى، احنا اكبر، احنا اسرع، احنا كل شيء هون هم عارفين.
Well, congratulations to people that made the video, and also we will put the videos in the chat if you want to share them or to see them again. You will have them in the chat, really inspiring. And Ben, do you have another story that you recall from your period there?
Well, Faisal reminded me of this just now in the chat. He appeared in that last image that we just saw. So he reminded me that in one of our performances in the village of Nabi Saleh in the West Bank of Palestine, we were doing a performance in the village square. This was several years into our visits to this particular village, so the square was packed with people. It was nighttime. We'd just finished enacting a story, and all of a sudden we could hear the sound of ululations and cheering, and this car traveled into the square with flags and a lot of excitement, and suddenly the whole audience stood up and swarmed over to the car, and it was a young man who had just been released from prisoner. He was a political prisoner, and he was taken from his car and brought up immediately onto the stage in front of the whole village, and Faisal ended up conducting a story for him. So from the prison to the stage, it was quite an extraordinary moment.
Wow, I got chills. Amazing, really inspiring. And also, please write in the chat if you have been part of these stories, but also now is the moment of questions or sharing or reflections, both from people that have been part of the stories, but also people that are here in live with us in the interview. You can share your feelings or you can ask questions. Now we have this time, so please welcome with your video and open mic to share or to ask or to reflect.
I'd just like to say something about this, the story from Nabi Saleh. Hi, this is Faisal. Yeah, so that moment, and in that square of the village, like we were already like half the way of the show, like almost we are ending. And suddenly this cheers comes up suddenly. First we thought of the show, the actors thought it's about them or what's going on. Is it that to this level that the story was like really powerful and people got excited? And the siren of the cars coming to the village, like it was a bit far away, so we didn't know what is it exactly, because also Nabi Saleh, it's very close to the Israeli settlement, like it's not far, so we thought also it could be attack. So, like they're attacking the show, so suddenly we're losing the show. Some people leaving, some people cheering up, some people excited. But the funny thing, like when we reached to the guy, he was ready for it. Like he thought, and with this like welcoming group, which was in the show, he was ready just to tell us, to share his happiness that finally he got released. And really like just a moment, that the passion, there is like a stage made for you to tell us how was it for you to spend like a couple of months in the prison, and to have an interview with him, like that was so touching, even without the story. Just somebody just got released from the prison, and he was ready at the moment. Yes, we forced him somehow. I was the conductor. I said to him, look, please, if you didn't tell us anything, then the show will collapse. Everybody will leave because all the village will go to his house. So either you share something with us, and we all will come to your house, like to congratulate you. And just he agreeing on that was like the show by itself. And yeah, this is one of the moments. It's one of the like where is like a Playback Theatre needed, because it's like, yeah, you are the person who want to share with us. And really, as soon the audience here, even the village and even also the Furor and the international audience also we have with us, I think maybe that was like the first time in their life they're seeing somebody who just got released from Israeli prison and he's coming to the stage to share a story. And that is the power of storytelling in a playback theater. And yeah, and the power of art of building like bonding in the community itself. And yeah, that's what I want to say.
Wow, thank you so much. It's really, really inspiring and touching. And Josawas is writing in the chat about her 2 visits to the West Bank to help train Freedom Bus members. And she is writing that it was unforgettable, a deep witnessing of both courage and oppression. So thank you for this sharing. And what else? What other memories or reflections come in your minds? What else is here with us in our First Generation Speak series? Mm. In the chat, Sarah Rifat is writing that she's from Egypt. Maybe, Sarah, can you join to say alive more instead of me reading your comment?
Okay, hi Ben, hi Farah, Soline, hi everyone. So I remember in 2018 we were rehearsing and Ben connected us to I think three people, if I remember correctly, who were from Gaza, and at the time the border between Gaza and Egypt would sometimes get shut down and sometimes open depending on the political situation with the occupation. And so I remember they joined our rehearsal and they were sharing stories, and it was very beautiful. And we sang songs. We sang this song called Win Aramallah together, and we also played back their stories. And I don't remember their names even. It felt like, you know, it was a moment, and they were talking about how people would wait for the opening of the crossing, and how this the story about two newlyweds who had to, you know, wait to get married, and one was on the Egyptian side of Rafah and one was on the Palestinian side. So I think these moments are really beautiful. Sometimes it's not even a performance but just a rehearsal where people can come and share, and it feels so intimate, and it also added to my understanding of the reality of Gaza, and a place that's so close. We share a border with it, but but it also feels like a different reality. But people are, the Egyptian also side of Rafah is so much connected to the Palestinian side because they're families who live on two sides of the border. My question was, I wonder where they are now, you know, and whether it's possible maybe, you know, for them to come again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Ben?
I'm afraid I no longer have contact with them, but I think you make a really valuable point about the stories that happen outside of performances. And in today's talk, you've heard the importance of spending time in the communities. And in my experience, there are many, many stories that happen outside of a performance that really help to build the relationship between the actors and the community members. It can happen over food, it can happen at nighttime. It's a way that the actors both learn more about the realities of life in those communities, which of course helps them when they come to enact those stories. But it also builds a foundation of trust and confidence. There are some people who don't want to share a story in a public context, But after the performance, they'll come up to the actors and they're very eager to share something in that more intimate space.
Yes, and in the chat, Vendela Klosterman wrote, "I'm deeply touched by your work and your courage." And then Hani Austrom wrote, "Playback theater is important for us because it is a form of resistance. Through it, we reclaim the right to tell our own stories and to be heard in a collective space. In a world where certain voices are often silenced or ignored, playback gives us a stage to speak, to be seen, and to transform our experiences into shared understanding. This is why we fight so strongly against any attempt to erase our voices or shadow it with colonial peace calls and what is so-called dialogue with our oppressors." Thank you for that, Hani. And what else we have now as reflections or sharing or questions or memories? We have few more minutes here together live in our First Generation Speak series and with our dear guests presenting Arabic speaking world of playback theater. So what else do we have? And Steve wrote in the chat that Ben and Soline invited me to do music and playback theater workshop in Cairo in 2018. I enjoyed my time there very much, and I learned a big lesson about different musical cultures. Yes.
I have something, I guess it would call for a more in-depth conversation, but when I hear how many performances and projects you have, and at the same time I'm hearing Soline's call to work on the intentions of the performance and to be all the, yeah, and the research and the knowledge. How do you hold both the all the preparation, and the what your, sorry, I can't find my words, the work you put into preparing for context and intention, and I guess also the debrief and learning from it, and the pace and the number of projects you're in. I don't know what to say about that. I can't wrap my mind around how you manage that. I would love to hear a bit more.
Yes, I was thinking the same, Valentin. So Farah, do you want to answer, or Soline?
Yeah, I can answer that. To begin with, we are a big troupe, so we are around 30 members. So not everyone is doing a performance every day. So we try to be careful that people aren't performing on daily basis. But yet, still the load is huge. The ongoing rehearsals do help. The weekly rehearsals do help fill that gap, because we use those rehearsal spaces to do the briefing and the context analysis, so it's not done on a separate time. I have to admit that it's a lot of work, it's a lot of mental load, and in times of big crisis, it becomes a lot. Like at the Beirut explosion, during the war, it was a lot, but it is also a space. So this workload transforms to become also a space for the team to feel meaning, to find meaning and purpose in what they are doing. So I can say that if we weren't doing all that work during the war, I think many of the team members would have out or collapsed completely. So it was life-saving for them to actually meet the team and feel and find meaning and find purpose in what they are doing, to find that their art is actually relieving their community members. It's also a political action. It's also an act of resistance and survival. So So it's a loop. It's too much, but then it's also this being too much also gives a lot of meaning and drive for those actors.
Thank you so much for the answer. Thank you, Valentine, for the question. Now I see that Jo is raised her hand, so please, Jo, welcome. Just the mic.
You are muted.
It's mute. Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute it. Yeah, I have a very practical question about that, which is, are you all paid for everything you do? Do you have funding that allows you to pay everyone for the time that they work?
Yes, most of the time we have funding. We try to, because people cannot do this and another job all the time. Some of them do have full-time jobs and they aren't doing playback as much. But yes, most of the time we do have funding, but we also have a big quota of the work that is unfunded and is done completely on volunteers base. Like, for example, our monthly performance that happens every second Wednesday of the month. This is not paid, yet you find the actors fighting to be on that show. Like, they all want to be on that show because it's in our studio. It's when the people come to us and we don't go to them. So there's a lot of privilege in being on that show. So it's a balance between funded work and non-funded work. But yes, most of the work is funded. Sadly, over the past few years, we've been struggling with funding with all the political agendas that funders are trying to push on us that we disagree with. But yeah, we're trying to find the ways to be sustainable as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Jo. And Henk Giobel have wrote in the chat, I have a deep respect from the work which is done by the Arabic playbackers. Thanks for it. And Hani is saying, I want to acknowledge that not all Arab-speaking playback practitioners and audience members are Arabs. Our community includes Kurds. Oh, sorry, I cannot.
Amazigh.
And people from many other ethnic and cultural backgrounds. And Soline answering, this is why we called the session Arab-speaking countries, which have Arabic as official language, in attempt to acknowledge that not all people are Arab. And Tarin is writing in the chat, Tarin Lee, your commitment, fire, and activism is inspiring and deeply valued. Thank you, Soline, Farah, Benjamin, for your talk today and to the wider network of groups and practitioners doing work in and with Arab-speaking communities. Farah's words resonate. We believe we are fighters and playback is not a luxury. Thank you, Tarin is saying. And also, we have a person being at the Steve workshop. Sarah, can you say your comment live, please? You wrote in the chat that the workshop was impactful, so maybe you can share some reflection.
Yes, and I believe, yeah, many people were in this workshop. Munir, who's on this call, and maybe some people who are not here now, but Soline, obviously, and Ben, and yes.
And Nadine.
Nadine, yes. I feel like I forgot who was actually there because we've been, in many things together. And I think there are people from Lebanon, maybe, or Sarah, maybe, or Sarah from Lebanon, Sarah Atal. So this was a very special workshop, and the impact of it is still felt. There are many exercises, games, and also I remember this handout of musical games that I still use till today. And I sent this handout that was written, I think, for the for a journal, maybe for IPTN, or maybe it was published in many places, but I send it to everyone who is like a new participant or a new member of our troupe who is interested in music, because it's such a great, like reference on how music is a big part. Because usually people think a playback is, it's all about acting or moving in your body, but music, being a musician role. And so this was really needed, at the time when still we didn't have a lot of practitioners, especially, musicians also. And so this allowed us to see ourselves, we can be musicians with all our varying skills, and so yeah, I consider myself a playback musician, yes, I think, because of this workshop. So thank you, Steve. And so this, it's important for this international collaboration to happen, because this is how people can spread their experiences and knowledge. And so I'm grateful to that, and to everyone who is sharing, and definitely Ben coming and sharing and being part of the community, and that made the difference. And then Soline and Farah and everyone really who's doing trainings. I feel we also take so much from training. We're not just giving, we are learning as well. And so that's all I want.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your sharing. And now we are going slowly to the end of our interview, but I want to give a space for some final voice before our speakers, of course, will have their final words. But if someone from our audience live here wants to share or say something, this is final moment to do that. And then our speakers will say their final reflections or words or wish for the future or whatever they desire to share at the end of our interview. And then I will say a few final words about what's coming next.
Can I say something? It was just, thank you so much, Sarah. The lesson I learned was we were about one day into my long weekend workshop, and people were being very adventurous and playful and creative. But somebody said, Steve, all of your music, it's great, but it sounds a bit like the Beatles or Johnny Cash, or it's very Western. And so then I had to think, well, and of course there were people there who sang in more of an Arabic sort of Eastern style with different scales and notations, and also using drums much more, just so like a single voice making a chant with a drum behind it, rather than the guitar and chords or a keyboard and melody. So it was, I was giving the workshop, but I learned a lot from the people in the workshop about how to incorporate different styles and musical traditions into the exercises that I was using. So thanks to you.
Thank you, Steve. And now, please, Farah, Soline, Ben, share your final words with us. Something that you want to say in the final moments of our meeting.
On the topic of trainings and trainers and being connected to the larger playback theatre community around the world, I want to acknowledge Joy Salas, because Joy was the only other trainer from outside of Palestine who came to give trainings to the Freedom Theatre during the years that the Freedom Bus was active, and Jo was extremely generous in giving her time on those two occasions, not only to come and work with us in the studio, but also to travel with us through remote areas of the West Bank of Palestine under very difficult conditions. So a big thank you to you, Jo.
Yes, Farah, Soline.
I also want to thank everyone within the international community who came to train us, of course, to begin by Ben, because for me, of course, like the first workshop was with Armand, but for me, it was Ben who put the foundation of Playback Theatre and
Something technically happened maybe, and I can use the moment that we had some few comments from Volodymyr Savirov that I missed to mention, so maybe until Farah comes back, maybe if you want you can share something, Volodymyr, if you wish. You had a few comments in the chat. Yes? If you want
Sorry,
to share.
I got disconnected. Sorry. So I was saying that a big thank you for Ben, because he established the foundation for us to go where we went. And so many other people from across the world were very supportive coming here and training. We know like this is not the most appealing region in the world. It's very tricky. It's very dangerous in so many moments. And yet we always had people being very generous coming to be part of the training process of playbackers in our region. And also I want to thank on that level the South African committee that coordinated the last IPTN conference in South Africa, because the work they did to include us, to give us voice and to make us present there was unmatchable, not only in the world of playback and the history of playback, I would say in the world and the history of arts all in all, and the applications of arts and civil society work and mental health. Like really, the work that those women did was marvelous, and we will always be, as Arab playbackers, proud and thankful for their initiative and the initiative of the IPTN, but their initiative specifically. Thank you for this sweet conversation. It was very nice. I enjoyed every moment of it.
Thank you so much. And before Soline say a few words, I just want to read Randy Mulder comment about that to Soline, Farah, Ben. Thank you for your heart, vision, and courage, and all those working with Arab-speaking communities. I am awakened to a deeper sense of my privilege and naivety. So I'm heartfelt and with gratitude. Yeah, Soline.
There are too many experiences that connect us to the international community that we would like to honor, but the time is short. But one of the things is that in 2020, 4th of August, we had one of the biggest non-nuclear explosions in the century in Beirut, in our capital. And in 1 minute, 200 people died, but also the many houses and jobs also were destroyed. And we got Hani Rustum, who is very good at also calling for initiatives, had this idea, supported by Ben, myself, and Farah, to create a playback response from the international community of our friends, of the trainers who have been connected to us, and the friends, the practitioners connected to us throughout this years. And we had 3 performances in support for our community to hear our stories, and it was We encourage everyone to do it in time of hardship. We need people to listen to our stories, to not only ourselves playing our stories to ourselves in the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Soline. And Ksenia Malatraki is writing in the chat, your voices need to be heard around the world and create a space for other voices too. So thank you so much for being here, all of you that are here with us live, and of course to our brilliant guests, Farah, Ben, Soline, for your honesty, vision, and presence. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you once again to Damiola, Igor, and Shewa that are our technical support today, and to everyone who joined all across the world. Before we end, I'd like to warmly invite you to our upcoming events. On November 10th, we'll gather for the global 50th birthday celebration of Playback Theatre, a joyful worldwide event to honor our beginnings. So I hope you will be there, and we will celebrate this milestone year. And on November 19th, we gather for the final time of this series, and it will be last episode of the First Generation Speaks with Presenting Africa with Leslie Palmer, Samson Setuno, Kathy Borowski. So this on 19th of November will be final interview. Of course, all interviews you can watch in YouTube. They're live, and also this interview will be there. So if you want to watch it again or to share it, we'll be happy if you do that. Playback Theatre was created to remind us of our shared humanity. Even in times of conflict and uncertainty, it invites us to listen deeply, to hold space for one another, and to build bridges where there are walls. Let's stay connected. Let's keep the conversation alive, and let's continue shaping the future of playback together. I'm Cveta Baliska, and it was my pleasure to be your host today. Thank you for being here. See you. Bye.